I didn't identify the ringtone. Her shaking finger hovered over the screen, her already pale face growing even paler. The call appeared to be from a family member. She hung up after a short conversation and sighed deeply. Is it possible? Not at all. Is her father already there? Michael is my name. I am a 35-year-old truck driver in Nagata, Japan, who works for a transportation company. Typically, I operate a 10-ton truck. I'd occasionally go up to 500 kilometers in one direction, putting in long, exhausting hours behind the wheel. Still, this job is perfect for someone like me, who isn't great with people. After all, once the loading and unloading are done, I'm on my own. I can spend my time however I like without worrying about anyone else. That day, I was assigned an unexpected job. It came from an old acquaintance of Mr. Taylor, the president, who lived in Moru, Kyoto. After completing a delivery in the city, I had to deliver materials picked up in Kanazawa to this acquaintance. The cargo wasn't big enough to require my usual 10-ton truck, but unfortunately, every other truck was out that day. So I rented a 2-ton long truck and planned a round trip from Nagata to Kyoto via Kanazawa. The weather was downright awful. Dark clouds hung low over the plains like a lid. Strong winds shook the truck, and a blizzard blanketed the roads, obscuring visibility. The storm had already paralyzed flights and train services in areas north of Tokyo and along Japan's northwest coast. Bad weather is nothing new in my line of work, but even I couldn't shake the unease caused by this storm. Heading south on the expressway, I entered Nagata, completed my first delivery, and then stopped for a break at a rest area. That's when I saw someone approaching the rental truck, waving their hand. I rolled down the window to see who it was. "Excuse me, could you give me a ride?" It was a young woman, probably in her mid-20s, shouting over the howling wind. Her long black hair was wildly tossed around by the gusts. Even in the storm, her refined features were striking. She was covered in snow from her head to her scarf and coat, clearly having been out for quite some time. "I'm heading to Nanao, but with this weather, the planes and trains aren't running." Nanao is in Ishikawa Prefecture in Japan, around the middle of Japan's northwest coast. From here in Nagata, it's nearly 300 kilometers away. When I asked how she got to this rest area, she said she had been hitchhiking, relying on strangers' cars. That's way too dangerous. "Well, if you're okay with me dropping you off at a junction along the way." "That's perfect. Thank you so much." I leaned over and opened the passenger door for her. She quickly brushed off the snow from her clothes before climbing in. What could drive such a young and beautiful woman to rely on complete strangers for a ride? What kind of situation could she be in? For now, I decided to help her as much as my schedule allowed. The woman introduced herself as Anna. She said she was 29 years old. She mentioned she was single and worked at a factory manufacturing mechanical parts. "You've really saved me. Thank you so much." Though she had a driver's license, she admitted she hadn't driven in years. I thought about renting a car and driving myself, but I just couldn't gather the courage. It was a wise decision. After all, the weather was this terrible. No matter how urgent her situation was, I thought it was the right decision not to take any reckless risks. Still, hitchhiking all the way is impressive. "What brings you to Nanao?" The moment I asked, her expression darkened. "Damn it," I thought to myself. It was clear she had some serious reason for her journey. As I suspected, what she told me was so heavy that I almost wanted to apologize for bringing it up. "Actually, I heard my father is in critical condition. My family's home is in Nanao, and I got a call from relatives saying he was rushed to a nearby hospital." I felt my foot press harder on the accelerator. Without realizing it, I had picked up someone in a truly dire situation. Anna had explained that her father had collapsed the previous night from a stroke. He had hit his head hard during the fall and was now unconscious. When I apologized, Anna gave a weak smile. "It's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm sorry, too, for suddenly asking for your help like this. If I accidentally caused an accident, it would only delay Anna's arrival at the hospital. The responsibility weighed heavily on me. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Anna let out a deep, heavy sigh. She regretted being such an ungrateful daughter. That's what she confessed. I was always rebelling against my parents in middle and high school. I wasn't the kind of kid who listened to them. I hated my parents, my hometown, and even myself. After graduating high school, she left her hometown after a fight with her parents and started a new life in another place where her friends were. Since then, she had rarely contacted her parents and had often ignored calls from relatives. What about New Year's or long holidays? I didn't go back. What a waste, right? For children who leave their parents' home as adults, the time spent with family during New Year's or long holidays is incredibly precious. I once heard this on the radio while working. Depending on individual circumstances, if a parent is 65 and lives until 80, the total time a grown-up child might spend with them could amount to just about 2 weeks. Anna had wasted what little time she had. But now that I'm older, I realize how much I should have spent more time with him. I should have shown more gratitude while I had the chance. Then came the news of her father's critical condition. Of course, she was desperate to return home despite the terrible weather. Tears glistened faintly in Anna's eyes. I could clearly see how deeply she regretted everything. It wasn't just regret. I also understood how devastated she would be if she couldn't see her father before it was too late. I knew that pain all too well. I need to help her get there. I want her to make it in time. I couldn't help but think that way. At one point, we stopped at a rest area for a restroom break. While there, I received a call on my work phone. It was from the contact person at the construction materials company in Kanazawa, the destination for my delivery. They wanted to know how soon I could arrive and asked me to get there as quickly as possible. I hesitated to give an exact answer. The best option would be for Anna, heading to Nanao, and me, heading to Kanazawa, to part ways at a junction along the way. However, I didn't want to simply leave her stranded in that area. If possible, I wanted to find her another kind driver heading north on the expressway along the middle of Japan's northwest coast. I'm sorry, it's just, with this weather. Yes, I think I'll be delayed. It wasn't a lie. In reality, the bad weather was causing delays. The speed limit was restricted to 50 kilometers per hour, and visibility was poor due to the blizzard. Even for someone like me, used to driving on snowy roads, it was unsettling. I'll do my best to arrive as soon as possible. I apologize for the inconvenience. That's what I said before ending the call. Anna was watching me as I put away my phone. She must have thought she was causing me trouble. That's likely what Anna was thinking. She said that it would be okay if I stopped here, that this was more than enough. That call earlier was from your customer, wasn't it? You're in a hurry, right? Anna said she would part ways with me here at the rest area and look for another ride. Frankly, it was reckless. I shook my head. With this weather, traffic is lighter than usual. You're not going to find another ride so easily. If you stay outside too long, you'll catch a cold, and hitchhiking is too dangerous. I can't leave you at risk like that. But I don't want to trouble you, she said. Even just taking the highway exit to drop me off would cost you so much time. I couldn't possibly ask that. It's fine. Now get in. Let's keep moving. Anna seemed a bit confused, perhaps because I left her no room to argue. But the one who was even more confused was me. Honestly, this wasn't something I would normally even consider. Abandoning my work halfway to help a complete stranger and heading to a place I had no reason to go. I think part of me was trying to justify it to myself, so I decided to share the story of my own life with Anna. I wasn't on good terms with my parents either. It's been that way for as long as I can remember. I grew up in a small town facing the Sea of Japan. My father was a fisherman, and my mother worked in a factory processing seafood. Anna's confession mirrored my own feelings. I hated my parents, I hated my hometown, and I hated myself. Now, those memories feel nostalgic, but back then, I couldn't stand my hometown. When my father told me to become a fisherman, I rebelled and left for Tokyo at 18 with no real purpose. After that, I drifted from one part-time job to another, just living day to day. Sometimes, when my parents called, I would lie and say, I'm too busy with work and can't take time off to visit. I still wonder why I was so determined not to go back home. One day, I got a call from my father. He said my mother had collapsed from an illness and told me to come home. But I was a stubborn, ungrateful idiot at that time, so I said it. I told him, I'm busy with work. Don't ask me for the impossible. I was 25 at the time. I remember that moment clearly. Even over the phone, I could feel my father's anger and disappointment. And in the end, did you go back? Yes, I did. The night after that call, I was suddenly overwhelmed with regret. I could not go, but by the time I arrived, my mother was already cold. Why didn't you come sooner? My father yelled, blaming me for being such an ungrateful son. Apparently, my mother had wanted to see me right until the very end. I apologized to my father and to my cold, lifeless mother over and over, but no matter how many times I said sorry, it could never be enough. I felt pathetic. After the funeral, I found myself too ashamed to go back to my hometown, even more so than before. But I couldn't stay in Tokyo either. Somehow, I ended up in Nagata. The president of a transport company took me in, gave me work as a part-timer, and eventually offered me a full-time position. It's been about 10 years now, as a driver. The car fell into a heavy silence. I realized I had shared an unpleasant and grim story, one that didn't exactly lighten the mood, but for some reason, I felt compelled to tell it. Sounds ridiculous, right? A truly ungrateful son. But that's exactly why I want you to make it in time. I want you to be able to repair your bond with your family. I want you to get another chance. It was then that I heard an unfamiliar ringtone. An unfamiliar ringtone echoed. It was Anna's phone. Her already pale face turned even whiter. Her trembling finger hovered over the screen. The caller seemed to be a relative. After a brief exchange, Anna hung up and let out a deep sigh. Could it be? I thought. No way. Had her father already? I glanced at her while driving. She noticed and shook her head, giving me a faint smile. No, it wasn't that. It was my aunt from my father's side, asking where I was. I told her, I'm still on my way. It seemed her father still hadn't regained consciousness. The critical situation was far from over. This car was about to reach the junction. Honestly, by that point, my mind was already made up. Adjusting my headset while driving, I called Mr. Taylor, the president of my company. Mr. Taylor, a man who had once been a truck driver himself, was known for his boldness and sense of duty. He was the one who, 10 years ago, had offered me a place when I had nowhere to go. Hello, Mr. Taylor. It's Michael. Sorry to bother you, but I have a favor to ask. It's about today's delivery. I explained how I had met Anna and shared the details of her situation. I told him I couldn't bring myself to abandon her at some halfway point. I wanted to make sure she could see her father. That's why, please let me drive all the way to now. I could feel Anna gasp beside me. Mr. Taylor's answer was as clear as ever. I thanked him and ended the call. I had expected him to say something to encourage me. That's the kind of man he was, and it's why all his employees admired him. He said, Go ahead. I'll handle the follow-up here, so let's head straight to now. I can't believe it. I don't even know how to thank you. What an amazing president. Yeah, that's Mr. Taylor for you. We all respect him. He's someone to look up to, no doubt. Suddenly, Anna covered her face and started to cry. She seemed overwhelmed, unable to put her emotions into words. To receive such kindness from strangers. I don't deserve this. I'm so sorry, truly. I understood why she was crying. Sometimes, when faced with selfless kindness, your heart overflows with gratitude mixed with a sense of unworthiness. I had felt the same 10 years ago when I met Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor, who gave me both a place and a job when I couldn't be there for my mother's final moments, fled from my father's cold gaze, and had nowhere else to go. Had I managed to return even a fraction of the kindness I had received back then? Regardless, there was nothing left to hesitate over now. The exit for the junction came into view. I turned the wheel to merge onto the other expressway, heading toward now. About an hour later, guided by Anna's navigation, the truck finally arrived at the hospital. I parked near the entrance of the hospital. We finally made it. Great job getting through this. Thank you so much. Anna rummaged through her bag and pulled out some cash from her wallet. Please take this. It's probably not enough to cover gas, but I'll make sure to properly thank you another time. No. I can't accept that. I didn't bring you all this way for a reward. Convincing Anna to put the cash back in her wallet was no easy task. I'm just passing along the kindness someone once showed me. It just happened to be you this time. There's no need to feel obligated. If you want to thank me, I hope you'll pass that kindness on to someone else in need. When I said this with a smile, she nodded, her tearful eyes shimmering. Now you'd better go inside. Just as I urged her to go, a woman emerged from the hospital entrance and noticed Anna almost at the same moment. It was likely the aunt she had mentioned on the phone. Once Anna got out, I drove away. Wait, please give me your contact information. Anna called out, running after me. She didn't need to know my contact information. I never intended to accept any thanks in the first place. That's why I had tried to avoid sharing any personal details while we were in the truck. We would likely never meet again, but that was fine. In the side mirror, Anna grew smaller and smaller. Her figure, bowing deeply with her characteristic sincerity, was etched in my memory. I prayed from the bottom of my heart that Anna would safely reunite with her father. With that prayer in mind, I left Nao behind. Of course, I didn't forget to contact Mr. Taylor. I was able to come this far thanks to Mr. Taylor's permission. I truly owe him my deepest gratitude. Working under such a strong and admirable man made me feel lucky. Determined to repay Mr. Taylor's kindness, I drove toward Kazawa as quickly and safely as possible. Even as I continued to eventually go back to the company in Nagata, I felt at peace the entire time. Days passed, perhaps weeks. I overheard some other truck drivers talking about something interesting during a break. They mentioned a beautiful woman appearing at rest areas, asking around for someone. She would show up every weekend, looking at the windows of parked trucks and speaking to drivers. Do you know a truck driver named Michael? She would ask. It had to be Anna looking for me. Since the truck I was driving was a rental, she wouldn't have known my company's name. I thought there was almost no chance she would ever find me. That's what I believed. But then, a few weeks later, we somehow met again while taking a break at a rest area. As usual, I noticed someone waving at me from outside the truck, and I was surprised. As I looked closer, I found you, that familiar radiant smile. Anna, just as beautiful as I remembered, stood before me. I stepped out of the truck and faced her properly. Thank you so much for what you did the other day. Thanks to you, I was able to reconcile with my father. Did your father wake up? That's wonderful. I'm so glad. A few days after Anna visited her father in the hospital, he finally regained consciousness. He is now slowly recovering, although some paralysis might remain. His life is no longer in danger. I truly believe in miracles now, and I think it's all thanks to you, Michael. After parting ways with me in Nao, Anna spent weeks riding express buses on her days off, searching for me in rest areas around here where we first met. She also posted on social media, asking for information to help find me. What incredible determination. Then again, this is the same person who hitchhiked all the way to Niigata. Eventually, we exchanged contact information. Anna, being proactive, frequently reached out to me and even visited me several times. It was Anna who expressed a desire to start dating. To hear someone as beautiful as Anna say she wanted to be with me. When she confessed her feelings, I felt like I was walking on air. One weekend, as usual, Anna came to visit my apartment with an unusually serious expression. She told me she wanted to properly express her gratitude. It's fine. You've already thanked me enough. You say that, but I'm not satisfied. That day in the truck, you told me about your father and what happened 10 years ago. I've been thinking about it ever since. Isn't there something I can do to help? Since missing my mother's final moments, I had remained distant from my father in my hometown. I would answer his calls when he gave me, but I still hadn't returned home for long holidays or New Year's. In fact, I hadn't even told him I was living in Niigata. Let's go visit him together. I want to tell him how, thanks to you, I was able to reconnect with my own family. Honestly, it was an offer I deeply appreciated. Anna was trying to help me resolve an issue I had been avoiding for years. It was time for me to gather the courage to face it, and I needed to respond to her kindness as well. I decided this was the perfect moment. I handed her something I had prepared in advance. Wait, could it be? It's an engagement ring. I've been wondering when to give it to you. Anna, will you stay by my side forever? In response to my proposal, Anna smiled through her tears and accepted my proposal. A few days after our engagement, I called home for the first time in years. My father was quite surprised to hear that I was living in Niigata. He said he never imagined I was living in the neighboring area. Dad, there's someone I want you to meet. I'm engaged. Would it be okay if I brought her to visit you that weekend? My father made time for us, and Anna, and I visited my hometown for the first time in 10 years. My father hadn't changed much from how I remembered him. His hair had more noticeable streaks of white, but that was about the only difference in his appearance. Together, Anna and I prayed in front of my mother's altar. My father spoke gently to my mother's altar. You must be surprised. I'm surprised too. Michael brought home such a beautiful bride. Anna smiled and shrugged lightly. If only my mother could be here, I couldn't help but think. Anna then introduced herself formally and began explaining how meeting me had been a life-changing event for her. That day, if Michael hadn't picked me up, I might have given up on seeing my father. If I had, who knows if he would have ever woken up. It's thanks to him that I was able to reconnect with my father. Anna repeated this several times before finally turning to look at me. That day, my Michael told me he wanted me to reconnect with my family. Now it's my turn. That's why I came here today. Encouraged by her words, I turned to face my father, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't meet his eyes. Anna gently placed her hand over mine as I looked down. Her touch gave me the courage to lift my head. I've regretted what happened 10 years ago every single day. Why couldn't I have gotten to Mom's hospital room sooner? Regret, self-reflection, and anger at myself. All these emotions overwhelmed me, spilling out as tears. My father gently placed his hand on my shoulder. It's okay. You don't need to cry anymore. I understand how you feel now. Anna and I got married around 6 months later. Only close family members and friends attended the small ceremony. Anna left me speechless with her beauty and radiance in her bridal gown. Since life is long, there will undoubtedly be many highs and lows. Like that day on the trip, there can even be stormy days. However, Anna and I recognize the value of familial ties. No obstacle will be too big for us to overcome together as long as we have that.